Hello, everyone, and welcome to FECast, the official podcast of Friends of Eternal. We are an Eternal community focused on competitive play. I am your host, Sunyveil, and with me today is TempestDragonKing. How are you doing tonight?
I'm doing alright. I've been better, but it's pretty alright. It's fun to play Eternal.
Yeah, it sure is, especially with the new Whispers of the Throne set with all the new cards. There's some really sweet ones, and we'll get to that in a sec. But let's just first go over the news that we have for this week. This weekend, there's going to be a Spring QCP challenge for those of you looking to get into the showdown at the end of the season, trying to get enough QCP points in order to qualify for this showdown that's going to eventually qualify someone for Worlds. There's going to be a showdown this week that's purpose is going to be just to give points for that. It is in the same format as ECQs, so those of you who like the 28 best of one structure, I personally am a big fan of it. Well, there's a tournament for you to play in this weekend. So we're going to be talking about that tournament and what we expect to see and what new strategies have been birthed from the new cards. All right, let's get started. TempestDragonKing, how many different decks have you played and enjoyed playing so far in this new format?
In Throne, there's like 3 or 4 decks that I've tried. Only 1 or 2 of them have achieved pretty good success.
Oh yeah? And what are those decks?
Well, I tried a Vraska Dragon stack in Throne. I wouldn't recommend it. Vraska's pretty alright. Good in Expedition. Not good in Throne.
Yeah, the removal in Throne is just way better, right? So
It is.
If you're relying on dragons, which are traditionally really big threats that don't get you value if they're removed immediately, then it doesn't match up well against decks that are really heavy on removal, right?
Mm-hmm. Or just go under you.
Yeah.
That's actually the bigger problem right now.
So what decks are going under you for something that's trying to play a mid-range game?
Yetis, Aggressive Stone Scar, Rakano Aggression.
Alright, so basically the good old decks that we're used to seeing in Throne, right? They've been around since forever, it seems. Yetis, Stone Scar, Rakano, aggro variants.
They've gotten some new toys. I may not be a fan of all these new toys.
So which new toy are you referring to specifically?
Milos Rebel Bomber.
Oh yeah, if your plan was to gain life to get out of the range of the opponent's units, you're just going to make Milos bigger. This is the 3-cost card from Whispers of the Throne. It's a fire unit. It's a 3/3 with Overwhelm and Charge, which is pretty good. It says whenever you hit the opponent, put a firebomb in their deck, which is mostly irrelevant. And also, the big part that pushes this card over the edge is it says that whenever an opponent gains health, this card gains attack and health, right? It's both of them, right?
Yeah, honestly, the firebomb part is also relevant. Not because it kills you with the firebomb, but because it puts a firebomb in your deck. And firebomb costs 1. Guess which card's being played again? That's right, even-handed Golem.
Oh, I forgot about that. Yeah, it shuts off the draw ability from even-hand Golem decks. But I think that if you're up against a Milos deck, the drawing isn't necessarily the important part for even-hand Golem decks. You just want to be able to make sure you hit your Sand Warriors and your Equivocates and basically your cheap stuff, because eventually you're just going to have, more stuff than your opponent does. At least that's my experience in the matchup, even-hand Golem against aggro. But, I was actually playing a game today earlier, and we'll talk about this strategy later, but I was playing Prax's Trove, which says that's the relic, the fire relic that costs 3, and says when you play a 1-cost unit, play a 1-cost spell from your deck, then increase this ability by 1. So then the next time you play a 2-cost unit, then you get a 2-cost spell, etc. So I actually played a 1-cost unit expecting to get Combust, and instead I got a Firebomb. That was a rude awakening.
Oh, that's something that could happen. Oh no.
The worst part was I didn't even get to draw a card because I wasn't drawing it. I just played it.
Yeah, that is the stone worst.
All right. So Milos is one of the surest bets to have made an impact from Whispers of the Throne, right? It's an aggressive unit. Yes, it's at a highly contested power cost, but it does something slightly better than most aggressive units do, and that's charging and overwhelm, right? So
E-
that's definitely making an impact on the metagame. What other cards or what decks have spawned with the new cards added in Whispers of the Throne?
Something I should add about Milos. Even though he's double fire, the fixing is so good nowadays that it's very rare that you're not going to hit double fire.
Oh yeah, absolutely. If you're playing in Throne, you have insignias, you have banners, you probably have seats. If you don't have seats, you probably have crests, and you might be playing a deck that plays both of them. So yeah, the influence is pretty good in Throne.
Speaking on influence, let's talk about a card that doesn't require any.
Oh,
Tempting Offer.
this is the one that it costs. No, this is the power that makes all the top 5 factionless cards cost one less, right?
For both players'
Right.
decks. It's a very sneaky card.
Okay, so how is this card being used?
Well, it's being used in mono faction, also in certain dual faction decks, but I wouldn't recommend it.
Okay, so what's the payoff? What are you trying to discount in order to make this card worth playing?
Veteran Mercenary, Caiaphas, sometimes Seek Power. I don't think discounting Seek Power is that worth it when you have Vara's favor and such.
I'm not sure that this. I'm not sure I'm sold on this. Like, sure, discounting Seek Power is fine, but you're probably discounting your opponent's Seek Power also. Caiaphas doesn't strike me as a card that's really playable, and Veteran Mercenary, especially if you're playing, like a one faction deck, I just don't think that card's very good either.
3 cost 4/4s are pretty good. And if you're recurring Caiaphas or your plan is to just recur or copy Caiaphas, it's actually pretty good, especially when you get him out a turn early.
I mean, is that a thing that's viable in Throne right now? Throne is pretty cutthroat. Like, it's difficult to break through into the meta. We have these decks like you were mentioning, Stone Scar and Yetis, and they've been around for such a long time, and their power level is so high and they're so streamlined. Like, breaking through into that is difficult, and like Caiaphas wasn't a card that was being played before these cards released, and neither was Veteran Mercenary. Granted, we've gotten some stranger synergies, I guess, but it still doesn't strike me as being good enough in order to make it worth it to decide to play that strategy as opposed to something else.
It also screws with the even-handed golem.
That's
because
true.
even-handed golem itself is factionless. I just got really tired of seeing even decks.
All right, fair. What else do we have that is new since the Whispers of the Throne release?
Alright, I think everyone is surprised we haven't mentioned a big one yet. Kilo.
Kilo. Oh, I have opinions about Kilo. All right. Well, why don't you tell us what you think about Kilo?
I also have opinions about Kilo. She is a 2-mana 1/3, Primal Justice Shadow. You may pay 2 and sacrifice another unit to play another unit with the unit's cost +1 for each of their battle skills. She's borderline broken. There's a lot of crazy strategies you could do with her. Silverwing's familiar into the Kimoni loop, where you just play a Kimoni, use Kilo's ability again since it readies her. Kimoni Dusk Rider readies her. Kimoni, by the way, 6 mana Justice 6/6 with Endurance. That readies all of your units on summon and has Corrupted too. She's a good card, especially now.
And it
then,
also prevents your opponents from playing spells into your next turn, right? It has that
Yeah.
Svetya clause.
Yeah, right. And opponents cannot play spells until your next turn.
Yeah, so Silverwing Familiar, if you sacrifice it with Kimoni, if you sacrifice it with Kilo, you can go get a 6-drop, and Kimoni is one such thing. And one big thing with Kilo that surprised me is that you actually get to choose which 6-cost unit from your deck you want to play, and I don't think we have too many cards that are like that. For example, Prax's Trove, which has a similar ability, takes a random spell of that cost as opposed to Kilo's ability.
If it says random, it's random. If it doesn't say random, you get to choose, which is nice.
Right. So, yeah, that's pretty good, but you also have to play Silverwing Familiar in a deck that you're not necessarily doing, typical Silverwing Familiar things. Like, you're probably not playing Mantle of Justice in your 3-faction deck, right?
No, but you could probably run a weapon in the market in case your plan fails.
I was playing a Kilo deck with Master's Blade. That's the one that gives a buff for every battle skill your unit has. And I mean, it was good on Silverwing Familiar, but also I feel like Master's Blade is just a lot worse in Throne than it is in Expedition.
And the payoff for that Kimoni loop is that you get to sack them for Icarius.
Yeah,
and
so
sack the Kimoni for Icaria, and the Shade for another Kimoni. And you can see where this is going.
yeah, so getting up to Icaria with Kilo is obviously fantastic. Do you ever sacrifice Icaria to go get something bigger? There's just like no unit that actually does anything at that cost, right?
I believe you get a 12 cost.
Yeah,
And let me check
that sounds familiar.
Yeah. Speaking of high cost units, Scourge of Frostholm has also been solved.
Oh yeah? Okay, so how do you get up to Scourge of Frostholm if you're playing Kilo deck?
Well, you can go to begin, you can go to Silverwing Familiar Loop, or you can get Mock, though. I think there's a 7-drop with 1 battle skill that you really want to get. I forget what it is. But for 6 cost, you can get Burspore Fern, which has 2 battle skills, Aegis and Overwhelm. And from there, you can get Moknati.
I'm still kind of underwhelmed here, I'll be honest. Moknati, yeah, that can go into Scourge of Frostholm and then also draw you a ton of cards, right? And at that point, you've probably won the game.
And lock your opponent out of spells.
Sure,
you just win at that point.
Yeah, okay. So, yeah, if you get into a game situation where you just have the time to do that with your deck that has all these random units in it, and you get up to, you go from Silverwing Familiar into Fern, right? Yeah, Burstspore Fern into Moknati, and then into Scourge for Frostholm. That's 4 activations. That's 4 turns of them not removing your Kilo or killing you or doing anything else. I think that if you get to do that, you deserve to win. I feel like there are easier ways to win than trying to set that up. I'm not saying that, like, Kilo is bad. I'm just saying that, like, this is a lot of setup. I feel like you can probably figure out a way to win with your 8 drops before needing to go to the 10 drop. And even then, I feel like there should probably be some way of winning with your 8 drops winning with your 6 drops before having to sacrifice them with Kilo. So what I'm talking about is, like, yeah, it's really powerful to go get something that's really expensive with Kilo, right? Go get a 6-drop. Go Silverwing Familiar, sacrifice it into a 6-drop. But instead of trying...
I think there's another way people get into Scourge rather than Silverwing Familiar. Also, I looked at the 12 drops. There's one.
Spirit of Resistance, right?
Spirit of Resistance.
Kill everything, basically. Kill everything else.
It's also void-bound. So
yeah, you'll never be able to play it from hand. Okay, but instead of trying to drown your opponent in this huge chain to get up to something that costs 10 or get 12, I think that just getting a bunch of 6 drops is probably a better way to do it.
Getting 6 drops is a pretty darn good way to do it.
Anyway,
yeah, let's continue.
So I do think that Kilo is probably a viable strategy, but I think that you have to be kind of boring with it, unfortunately. I think you just want your Silverwing Familiars to go into, like, Burstspore Ferns or whatever, and copy your removal spells, something like that, and just focus on having, stuff with Aegis that is very threatening, or go into an Icaria and not try to go bigger than that. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense.
The other...
Oh yeah, that's the thing. Black Sky Harbinger.
Oh yeah, Black Sky Harbinger is fantastic. Some people are playing one of the... I don't know if it's a new campaign card or something, but it's like a 6-drop with Invoke or whatever. Why not play...
Or a Piercer is a card from the new set. It's not from Whispers, it's from... Echoes of Eternity.
Yeah, it's the one that gets through Aegis, right?
Yeah, your spells and curses can't be negated or stopped by Aegis, In tribute, invoke Shadow.
Yeah, that doesn't strike me as being better than Black Sky Harbinger, which you can go sacrifice into an 8-drop into something that really drops the hammer. In my mind, there are two ways you can build the Kilo deck. One is to have every unit, basically every unit be a Shadow unit and try to go into Vara and start reanimating things. Go into Black Sky Harbinger into Vara, right? That's one way to do it. The other way, in my mind, is to have Silverwing Familiar because it is a 3-drop that goes into a 6-drop, which is a pretty big deal. And focus on Justice cards and use something like Svetya in order to be your top end.
There's also a few smaller decks that I'm seeing on of Kilo. The most recent one, like tops at Makar Stranger. I don't think that's Makar Stranger in Mokto. I don't think that's good.
I mean, it's really hard to play Makar Stranger in a format that has Torch, right? Every fire deck is going to be playing Torch, and answering your 5-drop with a 1-cost spell is just a huge swing. I've also seen Kilo decks go in or play even, and I think that's a huge mistake because it's really difficult to use your power efficiently when you do that, right? If you're playing all even cards, you're slow, and then Kilo is also a card that requires a lot of time. I just feel like that you're going to be way behind on development, even though, yes, you can play a 2-drop and sacrifice it to get an even-handed golem or something, or play an even-handed golem, sacrifice it to get another Kilo, something like that. I feel like it's just too clunky to function, especially outside of factions that let you play Sand Warrior, which is a really great tool for even-handed or even decks to get to recoup their tempo loss by, well, basically losing 1 power every other turn.
Yeah, Sand Warrior may just be wild. It probably is wild.
Yeah. All right. So, how big of a role do you think the Kilo decks are going to play in this weekend's tournament?
It's hard to say. I think they're strong. I think some of them are pretty darn strong. Everyone's gonna try to race to find the right build.
I guess so. I should mention that the deck that I'm planning on that I'm planning on bringing this weekend actually has no new cards. Keith Peleg, member of the Discord, finalist in some tournament or other, posted a list that was just FTJ, no new cards. It's playing 4 Naokis and it's playing like 4 Power Stone or whatever. And it feels really solid. I mean, it just does FTJ things. It's a really streamlined build. Props to Keith Peleg for figuring it out. And that is probably the front runner for me this weekend because I just don't have the time to put in adequate preparations for this tournament.
Naoki, huh? So they finally solved Naoki for Throne.
I'm not actually 100% sure because I think I might cut the Naokis. It's not that good against a lot of things, right? There's a lot of things that Naoki is just like really embarrassing against. If your opponent just has a deadly unit, or if they're playing some sort of go wide strategy, like there are a lot of ways that Naoki is just pretty embarrassing, right?
The go wide strategies do feel bad, especially since the shrine decks I've seen are in Expedition, not Throne.
I was playing a shrine deck earlier today, but we'll talk about that in a bit. I think that, it's a classic strategy of Pride Leader into Harsh Rule into Ikaria, right? That is fully ingrained in the eternal oral history or whatever, right? Everyone knows about it.
Pride Leader's not as ingrained into history, but is definitely a welcome addition. Partial into Akari has been a tool since the dawn of Eternal.
Yeah, well, if you go on Reddit, I'm sure you'll see plenty of people complaining about Pride Leader, right? So I mean,
that's true.
Yeah, it's a pretty classic control strategy, and it's working right now, even with 0 new cards. So I mentioned I was playing a Shrine deck earlier. I was actually playing the Praxis Trove deck, and there are a lot of busted things you can do with Praxis Trove. I don't know if it's good enough, but when it gets going, watch out. You can do some crazy things. Have you tried this card at all?
No, but I've seen some of the games that you've done. It looks promising.
Yeah, so I think in one of the games today, I played Trove on turn 4, and then on turn 5, I played Kato, which plays a 1-drop, so I got a 1-cost spell, and the 1-cost spell I got was Combust. I sacrificed my Kato in order to kill something. Well, Kato's Shade is a 2-cost card, so that triggered the Trove also. That got me a Devour, and I went ahead and just devoured the Shade that I had just made. Then I had 3 more power open. I played a 3-drop. The 3-cost spell in my deck that I got was Display of Destruction, so I sacrificed Unix for 6 more power. With the 3-drop, it was a merchant, so I went and got something from my market. I think I got a 5-drop. I don't think I was able to play both a 4 and 5-drop in the same turn, but I think I played a 4-drop in this turn, which got Rain of Frogs, and then the following turn, I played a 5-drop, which got Aramot's Machinations, which brought back a bunch of stuff from my Void, and it felt really good.
It's been a while since I've even seen Rain of Frogs.
Yeah, so it turns out that there aren't a ton of great spells, right? Like, spells, they're good removal spells that cost like 1, 2, and 3, but we don't really play spells that cost 4 and 5 much. Like, yeah, sure, Harsh Rule costs 5, and that's really good, but you're not going to play in a deck that's playing Trove because you're focusing on playing units in that deck.
You don't want to play Harsh Rule.
Yeah, those don't go together.
Fel Ritual isn't bad.
Yeah, but like mediocre removal spell or off-faction Rain of Frogs. So one of the really sweet things about both Praxis Trove and Kilo is that you get to play a bunch of off-faction cards. Decks that can't produce Fire Influence are playing Icaria out of Kilo decks, which is super sweet. And then in this deck that I was playing, which was Destruction, Fire, Time, Shadow, I was playing just a 1 of Rain of Frogs that I could get with the Praxis Trove. And then obviously Aramot's Machinations is a very powerful 5-cost spell for that deck.
Aramot's Machinations is just a home run card. It's done a lot of crazy things for me. Yeah. Crazy things against me.
So, I mean, one of my big questions is, was this actually any better than just playing, like, you know, a Shrine to Carve It and basically having the rest of the deck be the same, except, well, yeah, I'm just like, I get back a Not His Faithful and sacrifice a Kato or something with my Aramot's Machinations, and I just suddenly attack for a ton rather than building a big board presence. And I can't say for sure that Trove was better than Shrine to Carve It would be in that strategy, but boy, was it fun. So,
you know what would be a bit dumb in that sort of deck? Furious Compulsion.
That is the one that does 3 damage? No, what is that one?
Your units get +1 attack. Create and draw a headshot.
Oh, yeah. Okay, that was kind of what I was thinking. Wait, why is that good? Because you just get a headshot?
You get a headshot. You can use it later. If you get enough power in a turn with like 2 Troves, you can really go off. Use the headshot in the same turn as you use the Furious Compulsion and really just slam into an opponent.
Man, this sounds like a really difficult way to win. Whenever people tell me stuff like that, I'm just like, yeah, that's probably really good. But it's also probably just like more difficult than attacking with Combray aggro or whatever.
Yeah, Combray aggro is just good.
So one other strategy that I tried with Trove was a Skycrag deck, and this was based off of the fact that Inspired Prank is a 3-cost spell that plays a 4-cost unit. This is 3-cost primal spell, play a snowman Yeti or Yeti snowman or something into play that has +1/+1 for each spell in your void, something like that. But it's a 4-cost unit. So what you do is you play Trove, you play your 1 and 2 drop, then when you play your 3 drop and you play Inspired Prank, all of a sudden you get your 4-drop to immediately play your 4-cost spell. Unfortunately, the best card I could find was still just Rain of Frogs, but it was pretty cool going 3/3 into have an additional body into play a Rain of Frogs for free. And then for your 5-drop, what you can do is you can play Thunder of Wings, because that goes and gets another Thunder of Wings. It's pretty sweet.
Thunder of Wings is very neat. I just had two separate hilarious ideas.
All right,
The
let's hear
less
him.
the less hilarious ideas rise to the challenge. 4-drop, tutor for whatever unit or weapon you feel like. That's probably something. It's not hand disruption, but it's fetch whatever's most needed right now. And the other is Fantastic Revelation.
Which one's that?
Oh, you're not gonna believe this. Play all power cards from your hand depleted.
Oh my goodness.
Nightfall.
Yeah, you were right. I don't think that's necessarily good. Chamomilk was experimenting with Victor's Feast, which does a lot of things. It's like create and draw a treasure trove, a totemite, a giant, an 8/8 giant, and a something that gives you 1 power, like a spell
Power
that gives
burst.
Yeah, exactly. So
Yeah.
that could also fit in the 4-drop slot. So there's a lot of things that you can do with this. I'm not sure, like I'm not sure if there's a good way to break it, especially not in, the 2 days before the tournament. I'm probably not going to play a deck like this, but that card does some really good stuff, and anytime they release like a good a good 4 cost or 5 cost spell, you should watch out for Praxis Trove, because I think that's going to be a very strong card in sometime in the future.
Kudos if you ever get to channel the Tempest with it.
Oh gosh, I think that, again, that's like, yeah, that's really cool if you can do that, but there's probably a way to win that is not that convoluted, that doesn't involve going that far. So
if you get the 5, you're probably winning.
The other thing to really watch out for with Praxis Trove is things that help you climb the ladder. Like Inspired Prank is fantastic because it's a 3-cost spell that makes a 4-cost unit. If there's any spell, like if there's a 1-cost spell that makes a 2-cost unit, I think that's one of the things that the deck is really looking for. And I mean, if there's something that's like 1-cost spell, make a 2-cost unit, 2-cost, make a 3-cost unit, etc. Like, you can just set off this huge chain reaction. So if they make enough of those cards, it will probably get nerfed, but it will be it'll be fireworks and up until that point.
So moving on, there's a card that I think is actually gonna make waves other than Kilo, and that's Fox, Nurturing Sadist.
This is the Destruction triple faction 2-drop?
Yes, he's a 2-mana 3/2, Fire Time Shadow. When you play a Nightmare, it gets +1/+1 for each Nightmare in your Void, and if you sacrifice 2 units and exhaust Fox. Note that this is free. You gain 4 life, and your opponent must sacrifice a unit. He's been doing terrific things for me in Expedition, and I think he's Throne viable.
So the issue with playing it in Throne is that you have to have enough Nightmares to be worth it. Like, the Nightmare cards have to, the Shade, the Nightmare Shade cards have to be strong enough to be worth running. And obviously there's Kato, which is fantastic, but what else makes the cut in that deck? Because it feels like you'd probably have to play a lot of below rate cards in order to make that work.
Hey, Piercing Grief's fine in that deck. You can do a few silly things in Piercing Grief if it goes unopposed.
Piercing Grief is the 3/1 sacrifice this at end of turn revenge.
Lifesteal, charge, revenge. And is just done a lot of goofball things in the past. Anyone remember the 5 stages of grief? It featured there.
That deck wasn't any good, was it? It was just hilarious.
It was irritatingly good for a time. It's not good anymore. My old Destruction deck probably degraded into alright territory by this point. Anyways, there's also Memory Dredger.
Memory Dredger, that's the one that brings back 2-drops, so let's see. You're going to either bring back Vox, or you're going to bring something you can sacrifice to make a Shade, right?
Speaking of things that make shades, Blight Moss.
Yeah, I'm not really impressed by that card.
Blight Moss is a Feast or Famine card.
Yes, very much so.
It's really, really, really good against aggro.
Yeah,
They will hate you when you just slam it on a board with 2 Yetis and start deleting them.
Well, sure, yes. That it
Heck,
is
you can
very
even
good
taunt.
against Champion of Fury, and I do not plan on playing Champion of Fury partially because of this. But I mean, if all you're getting is a 1/2 flyer, like if you shrink a random huge time unit, like a Tokus being a 2/4 going to a 1/3, it's not going to be a huge deal. And I don't know, I just think a 1/2 flying corrupted is a little below rate.
It is definitely below rate, but it's also good sag fodder.
Yeah, it's all really just dependent on if you get to kill something, because that's huge, right? It's kind of like Var's favor, except I think that it's more dependent on killing something than Var's favor, because Var's favor like has a lot of flexibility. It's
Yep.
mostly it's more about the power. And for shoot, what's this card called? The 1/2.
Blight Moss.
Yeah, it's more about being able to kill something, right?
It's irritating. It's kind of dead against control, but it still pops Aegis's.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to playing Keith Peleg's FTJ control on Friday.
Yeah. Is there a chance that the Trifaction Legend there sees play, or is that just one of the weakest ones?
I remember thinking that it was pretty weak. Do you remember what it does?
Kilo Bright-Eyed. Firetime Justice. 2 mana 2/2. When you play a unit, gain 1 armor. You may pay 5 to play a golem with attack or health equal to the number of your units.
Yeah, that strikes me as being really bad. Alright, let's
Seems-
round things up, shall we? Any
We
other
shall.
decks you think are going to be big players that are new with the Whispers of the Throne expansion?
Let me see here. It's mainly Kilo. The Destruction Dog's still going. I forgot about one. Throne Room decks.
I actually saw someone playing the Throne Room against me, and I was not super impressed, but they also just couldn't get it off. Could you read off the text for this one? It's a primal relic, right?
Alright, 3 Primal. When one or more of your units hits the enemy player, you gain an Aegis. After the third time, play a 7/7 Daraka. After the sixth, play a 6/12 Island. Spellcraft 3. Play Savagery. Savagery gives the unit Overwhelming Killer.
Okay, here's my issue with the card. First of all, it costs 3. That's a pretty contested spot, especially in aggro decks. If you want to play merchants, they cost 3. A lot of great cards, just cost 3. So it's something that's going to be competing with other cards for a slot. It also doesn't really do a ton until you've hit the opponent 3 times, right? 3 times until you get to play Daraka. If you get to play Daraka, that's a pretty big payoff, but you're still kind of weak to some sweeper or something like that.
That's not 3 turns. That's just 3 separate attack phases or units that get to hit the enemy.
Oh, so
It
if
could
you
be-
hit your opponent with 3 different units, you get a Daraka?
No, not 3 different. Well,
I know, it says
If-
whenever 1 or more of your units hit them, right?
yeah. If 3 units are attacking and they all hit them, you get 1 trigger.
I guess
But-
Wump probably triggers this, right?
Yeah, but if you play 3 Yeti with Swamp on the board, you do get Daraka.
But if you play Wump, you're already winning, and Wump fights with a spot for this. And also it comes at the cost of not playing something like Masterwork. I'm just kind of underwhelmed by this card. It's
Iceberg
one of the
Scatter.
cards that Sunny thinks is bad because it doesn't have an immediate effect or is expensive. That's the Sunny scale for you there.
It might not be as good as it's hyped up to be. But that comment of merchants reminded me. More and more decks are starting to use market spells, even in Throne. Especially Blazing Salvo.
That kind of surprises me because I feel like more than an expedition, like unitless control or a control deck where the units don't matter so much is much more prevalent in Throne than it would be in expedition. So you could be sitting with a market spell that just doesn't do a whole ton. I don't know, like the merchants
you're
are
an aggro
pretty
deck.
strong.
These are mostly aggro decks, mind.
Yeah, I guess. I don't know. I'm
Like
not
hyper
really that
aggro.
sold. I feel like the merchants are just like really powerful units in general.
If your plan is Kazuo, Fury Blade, I don't think a 3/2 for 3, even if it has Overwhelm, has any place in there.
Really?
Unless
Because
you're
I think
doing
it's fine.
something
You can also build your market around having a unit in play. Like, you can have a persuader in the market in order to curve out into.
I mean, that's pretty good.
Yeah.
But that strikes me as more you want to be playing Eclipse Dragon as top end, rather than you top up at 3 or 4. And yes, some of these decks do top up at 3. Anyways.
Sunny is difficult to impress and is super snooty, and this does not impress him. Okay, so here's what I think is going to go down at this tournament. I think that Milos is going to play a small role in decks that already exist, but a role nonetheless. I think that maybe someone can break Praxis Trove. It definitely has the potential, but I think the likelihood is pretty low. I think some people are going to play Kilo decks. I think those are going to be reasonably successful. I think that's a powerful thing to be doing, although I think that if you're building a deck for it, you want to be careful about being too greedy. There's some greed that I think is really good in it, like having a 7-drop be Ikaria that you can't play otherwise. I think that's fine. Ikaria is just such a powerful 7-drop that's worth it. But trying to go up to like Scourge of Frosthelm, I think you can probably figure out how to win without trying to, sacrifice an 8-drop to get a 10-drop. So
mind, I only saw that once.
Okay. Aside from that, I think that it's going to be a lot of decks that you come to expect out of Throne. Even Elysian, Stone Scar, and Skycrag aggro. Justice, Fire, like Ikaria control decks. And then some people are going to be trying to play Praxis or something, right? Everyone, there's always that person that's playing Sandstorm Titan into World Bear Behemoth and trying to get a Karos out, right?
Well, why am I still seeing even Elysian in this world of Milos and tempting offer?
I mean, I think it's still fine. Like, the Milos has to hit you, which isn't a guarantee, and even then, it might not be absolutely backbreaking to, like, if you already played an even-hand Golem, you might be fine, and I just don't think that tempting offer is that tempting, I guess.
Yeah, it's not that tempting.
Yeah. All right, well, good luck to everyone out there who's going to be battling it out this weekend. I have a personal plug. I'm actually performing a concert on Saturday morning on my Twitch channel, twitch.tv/Sunyveil at noon Pacific. It's going to be, piano versions of a lot of video game tunes. So if you're interested in that, come check it out. If you need a break between your rounds for the tournament, come check it out. Any plugs you have, TempestDragonKing?
I think I'm good.
All right, and of course, we'd like to thank our generous patrons from patreon.com. If you would like to support FECast or Friends of Eternal, we do have a Patreon, patreon.com/Friends of Eternal. You can help support the cause. I'd like to thank Chrissier, Yeastout, Chamomilk, Work Done Son, and D-Dub for being patrons of the show. Thank you very much for your support. You help make FECast possible. That's it for us this week. Thank you all out there for listening. Make sure you join the Discord. It's the best place to talk about competitive Eternal. There's always a link in the show notes. And yeah, good luck, have fun, and thanks for listening. Have a good one, everyone. Friends of Eternal is awesome, but you know what's even more awesome? Our amazing patrons over at patreon.com. That's right, Friends of Eternal now has a Patreon where you can help support the content and initiatives of Friends of Eternal. If you enjoy FECast and you enjoy the Piloting Club and you want to join the people that make all this possible and sustainable, be sure to head over to patreon.com/Friends of Eternal and consider donating. Every little bit does help. Thanks again for listening, and I'll see you next time on FECast.